did, well, it came from from oral teachings. It was called King Udayana and the Wheel of Life. And I never really got the whole dependent origination thing. Dependent origination is a positive way of describing emptiness in Buddhism, which is what you need to see to get liberated. You need these two things, bodhichitta and emptiness. So Ken Rinpoche taught little Mongolian children dependent origination with King Udayana, with a little story, with little panels, King Udayana and the Wheel of Life. It's like a children's book. And I read this book and I got it, you know. So I also read books by people like Jeffrey Hopkins, who is a PhD Buddhist guy, and you have to get an encyclopedic dictionary out even to understand what this guy's talking about. I think Buddhism should be accessible to for the scholars. You give them the very intellectual presentation. For the average person, you dumb it down. So we're going to say some prayers. If you don't know them, or if you don't want to, that's cool. Generally, we would just do prayers. The prayers themselves are one going for refuge. When you become a Buddhist, you have refuge. One of the thing that distinguishes you from other people in the universe is refuge. When I went for refuge about 10 years ago to Ken Rinpoche, it's in a ceremony, and they could do a bunch of vows. You sit like a chicken, very traditional, goes way back to the time of the Buddha. You sort of sit squatted, and then you just, it's like I don't know what it'd be like communion or confirmation. It has very much that vibe. I don't think I've had any religious kind of feeling in a temple ever in my life, you know. And so you get kind of heard in, and then you repeat after, Rinpoche. Rinpoche, by the way, it means you'll hear a lot in the Tibetan community. They'll call Rinpoche this, Rinpoche that. Rinpoche is means precious substance, precious. There's like 7 classic Rinpoches, gold, silver, platinum, all of it. So they see their teachers as being so precious in that they give you the Dharma. So it's kind of become a term for Tibetan teachers. So I brought this friend of mine who I met through the punk rock scene. This is a long time ago now. And he just came along with me. I'm like, hey, you want to go check out this thing I'm doing over here at this temple? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I bring him in with me. We're going for refuge, man. It's not something that just like, hey, man, hey, dude, cinnamon. We get some coffee and donuts, and hey, you want to go check out some refuge, man? So, that's what Cinnamon was barking about. She's our guard dog, but she's the kind of guard dog that runs when any kind of serious trouble comes around. She runs, very funny girl.
Serious trouble.
Yeah, the Buddhists are very, very serious trouble. Or people, Cinnamon, you'll be good. Okay, so Tom Brown, singer in a punk rock band. So I bring him to refuge, and my abbot's like, we're all going for refuge, and he's like, hey, he's sort of standing at the door. Rinpoche's like, are you coming in? So you take your backpack off, and he didn't like stuff being brought into the temple. He was never into stuff. Take your backpack off. That's very Tibetan, traditional Tibetan. No notes taken. Just sit there, and sit and listen for 8 hours. That's a very traditional Tibetan teaching. So we go through this refuge thing, and this poor guy mumbles along with it, and then we leave, and I'm like, hey, dude, guess what? You're a Buddhist. He didn't come to become a Buddhist. He's like the first accidental Buddhist I've ever met in my life. Like he and I don't know if you've ever pursued it, but anyway, that's not refuge. We just mumbled some kind of ritual, and that's not real refuge. Real refuge is what kind of accepts some kind of realities that you may not really understand, like that there may be worse places than this, that there's reincarnation, and if you're lousy, you go there. And real refuge is actually fear-based, which isn't very new, very attractive for modern, Americans that are sort of religion shopping. you don't want to go to the lower realms and you believe that something the Buddha said, or his teachings, or teachers can do something for you. It's just very basic. It's like, I don't want to go there. Anything you guys can do to keep me out of there is cool. That's like the basic mind for, and like when you're a little kid, you run to your mommy and daddy. They're like that way with you. Then when you get a little older, maybe you run to the cops, or your 357 or Smith & Wesson, if there's any problems. Then maybe you get older, when there's problems, you run to the doctors. Refuge is just running to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And actual refuge is when you have it in your mind. When you're like, I don't want to go there, and whatever practices I have to do, I'm going to do them. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to listen to my teacher. You got that 24/7, then you got refuge. And what are you going refuge to? The Dharma is not so. Dharma comes from a Sanskrit term, chu in Tibetan. Dharma means any object of phenomenon. It can mean any existent. It can mean any object. This is a Dharma. My glasses are a Dharma. My voice is a Dharma. But in a particular Buddhist context, Dharma means any teaching of the Buddha. When Buddha first taught, the words that came out of his mouth, a couple hundred years went by, and nobody, I think the first 50 years after, they got together and started talking about, and quite a while went by, the first council, and then they memorized stuff back then, and then they repeated what they heard, and they argued about some stuff, and then they put down the speech of Shakyamuni Buddha. So in the Tibetan scriptures, that's the Kangyur, which is all the words of the Buddha. Then, the sutras on concentration, the sutras on the higher knowledge, and the sutras on Vinaya, which is monks and nuns' morality and laypersons' morality. And then there's the Indian commentators that, like Master Nagarjuna, and the teachers that came later, there in the Tibetan scriptures are called Tengyur. And they are all the Indian masters that commented on Lord Buddha's speech and debated about it and wrote, great texts. Then there's the Tibetan teachings, which is Sumbum. Sumbum is all the Tibetan masters, teachers' comments on the Buddha. So, usually in Buddhism you start off with just, like with all of our commentaries that we do here, usually are Pabongka Rinpoche's commentaries. And Pabongka Rinpoche was a teacher, late 1800s, early 1900s in Tibet, who really could break down Buddhist philosophy to a very basic for the average Tibetan. The average Tibetan was not well educated, so he would do teachings and people would come from around the country because he was just clear and simple. And so a lot of our and plus he was a teacher, one of the teachers of my abbot, so he's very much influenced by his commentaries. So that's the actual Buddha you're going for refuge to is the future Buddha you will be. It's like a state of omniscience and bliss that you don't suffer like this anymore. It's the whole purpose of Buddhism. When I was studying Catholicism, one of the things that bummed me out was there was very little talk about how getting like Jesus one could be, what that Jesus experience might be, and step by step how to get that. There were times in the New Testament where you can clearly see Jesus is talking from a different space, and and then just pray to him and he'll save you. I wanted a little bit more. I wanted a little,
I'm sorry, I should have said it. You were talking about it. Dharma, I keep getting confused because people keep saying it's something that I didn't think it was. Years ago, I heard that I thought it was your path.